Have you ever promised yourself, next time, I'm going to handle this situation differently, and then found yourself reacting the same way you always do? Here's what I mean. Your spouse gives you the silent treatment. You've experienced this situation many times before, but this time you decide, I'm not tolerating this anymore. Then 1 day passes, 2, then 3 days pass, and still the silent treatment. So you cave. You ask your spouse what's wrong. You try to smooth things over. You do whatever you can to make the tension go away. Then you feel it. That uncomfortable feeling inside. The disconnect between I'm not tolerating this anymore and the way you just responded. If you grew up as the family scapegoat, moments like this aren't random. They're signs that old conditioning is still shaping your responses. Today, I'm sharing 7 signs that your scapegoat conditioning may still be keeping you from being yourself. Welcome to Lessons for Life with Grandma Kate. If you're done with people-pleasing, tired of repeating the same patterns, and ready to learn what healthy relationships actually look like, you're in the right place. I get it. I was there too. At 65, I started learning the things I wish I'd known decades ago, like how to see the patterns, why we keep repeating them, and how to finally treat ourselves with the respect we always deserved. And somewhere along the way, I realized something that changed everything. When we don't understand our patterns, we pass them on, not because we're bad parents, but because no one ever showed us anything different. That realization drives everything I do. So join my free weekly email community by signing up for my cheat sheet, See the Pattern, Now What, for each episode. I'll help you name the pattern, show how it shows up in your life, explain the cost, and how to respond differently. Find the link in the show notes or visit lessonsforlifewithgrandmakate.com. Like a lighthouse, steady and strong, let's all shine a little brighter today. That disconnect between being yourself and the way you keep responding has a name. It's called incongruence. It's the gap between who you know you are deep down and the way you keep responding. For people who grew up in the scapegoat role, that gap is the result of years, often decades of conditioning that taught you to abandon yourself in order to survive. You learn to keep the peace instead of speaking your truth, to smooth things over instead of holding your boundary, to question yourself instead of trusting yourself. The good news, conditioning isn't your identity. Your identity can be changed, and recognizing these 7 signs is the first step back to yourself. Number 1, carrying inherited shame as your identity. If you grew up as the family scapegoat, you didn't just experience criticism, you absorbed it. Over time, the things that were said about you, you're too sensitive, you're difficult, you're the problem. Stop feeling like someone else's opinion. Instead, they started feeling like the truth about who you are. That's inherited shame. It's believing there's something wrong with you because it's what someone else repeatedly told you. But that shame isn't yours. It was handed to you by people who needed someone to blame. And number 2, chronic self-doubt about your perceptions. Once you believe you're the problem, something else happens. You stop trusting yourself. Most every thought you have, you second-guess yourself. You question your perceptions. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe it really is my fault. This isn't a weakness. It's what happens when you've been told for years that your version of reality is wrong. And little by little, you stop trusting your own instincts and start relying on other people's interpretations instead. Sign number 3, keeping the peace instead of speaking your truth. When you don't trust yourself, you stop speaking your truth. Not because you don't want to, but because somewhere along the way, you learned that telling the truth came with consequences. You were called dramatic, disloyal, the one who causes trouble. So you go quiet. You edit yourself. You make yourself smaller so the people around you can stay comfortable. And sign number 4, self-abandoning instead of self-honoring. Eventually, you stop listening to yourself altogether. You say yes when your body is screaming no. You ignore warning signs in relationships because you're afraid of being blamed again. You dismiss your own needs as too much, too needy, or too selfish because after hearing those messages for years, you eventually started believing them yourself. This is the cost of putting everyone else's comfort ahead of your own instincts. You disconnect from yourself. And sign number 5, standing up for yourself, then backing down. This is often the most painful sign because it happens after you've made the decision to stand up for yourself. You finally try something different. You set a boundary. You say no. You speak a truth you've been holding for years. It feels right. It feels aligned with who you are. Then someone disapproves. The silent treatment starts. The family phone calls begin. And within days, sometimes hours, you back down. You apologize. You undo the boundary. You smooth everything over. Not because your boundary was wrong, but because the disapproval felt unbearable. Your values didn't change. Your conditioning took over. Your nervous system learned long ago that someone else's discomfort meant danger for you. And sign number 6, choosing familiar criticism over healthy connection. Here's where the conditioning reaches beyond your family and starts shaping every relationship in your life. If criticism, control, and chronic disappointment are what love felt like growing up, they begin to feel familiar, even normal. Then someone kind, steady, and emotionally safe comes along, and something feels off. Maybe they seem boring. Maybe you find yourself waiting for the criticism to come. So without even realizing it, you keep gravitating toward people who treat you the way you were treated, not because you want to be hurt, because it feels like home. And sign number 7, reacting like you're still in an unsafe environment. Even though your circumstances may have changed, your nervous system is still responding as if you're living in the family you grew up in. Someone is disappointed with you, and it feels dangerous. Someone is angry with you, and you immediately want to fix it. Someone misunderstands you, and you feel an overwhelming need to explain yourself. Logically, you know you're safe, but your body responds as though you're not. That's because your nervous system learned long ago that conflict, criticism, rejection, or silence couldn't threaten your sense of belonging. Your values are clear, but your nervous system is still wired for survival. That's why self-trust isn't just changing your thoughts. It's teaching your body that it's finally safe to respond differently. For years, I wrestled with incongruence, that uncomfortable feeling between how I wanted to respond and how I actually responded. I know what I believed in. I know the kind of person I want to be. And yet, I still find myself reacting in ways that don't match either one. Here's a small example that isn't actually small at all. There are a few family members who stopped wishing me a happy birthday a couple of years ago. Even when they see me on my birthday, they say nothing. I still don't know why. I've offered to work things out, but they've chosen not to. Every year it happens. I get that familiar sting. Hurt first, then anger, and then a thought I'm not proud of. Fine, I'll teach them. So the first year, I stopped wishing them a happy birthday too. And you know what? I felt justified. But it wasn't me. It wasn't the person I know myself to be. Because here's what I actually believe. Every person deserves to be celebrated on their birthday. Every person. That's not just a rule I follow. It's something I deeply believe in. The moment I stopped wishing them a happy birthday, I felt that familiar conflict inside. That disconnect That isn't who I am. For a long time, I couldn't even sort out whose thoughts were whose. Was the anger mine? Was the guilt mine? Or was I reacting from decades of conditioning that stopped me from being myself? That taught me my feelings were the problem and keeping the peace was my responsibility. I'm still working through that. But here's what's changed. Now, when those same family members don't wish me a happy birthday, I wish them one anyways. Not because it doesn't hurt. It still does. But because staying true to what I believe in feels more like me than punishing someone else ever did. I've learned that healing doesn't always remove the hurt. Sometimes it simply changes your response. Choosing to live according to what you believe in instead of your conditioning, even when it feels unfair, is how incongruence slowly becomes congruence. Congruence isn't about changing everyone else. It's about your behavior finally matching what you believe in. Every time you make one of those quiet choices, you come back to yourself. Because congruence isn't becoming someone new. It's finally becoming yourself. Here are 3 life lessons that continue to shape me. Life lesson number 1. Separate your conditioning from yourself. One of the most important shifts you can make is learning to tell the difference between what you actually believe and what you were conditioned to believe. Because here's what conditioning does. It's so familiar, so automatic, so deeply practiced that it doesn't announce itself. It just sounds like your thoughts. So start asking yourself one simple question. Is this mine? Or is this my conditioning? For example, I'm overreacting. Then pause and ask yourself, am I? Or have I been told that so many times I now say it to myself before anyone else can? That question, is this mine or is this my conditioning, doesn't solve everything, but it creates a moment of space between your thought and the response. And in that space, you get to choose. Life lesson number 2, let your values make the decision. For most of your life, if you grew up as the scapegoat, your decisions were made for you, not by your own values, but by the need to keep everyone else comfortable, to keep the peace, to stay safe. So here's the shift. Instead of asking what will keep everyone happy, ask what matches who I want to be. Instead of what keeps the peace, try asking what is aligned with what I believe in. That's not a small change. For someone who spent years shrinking themselves to manage everyone else's emotions, choosing your own values as your compass is a radical act. It won't always feel comfortable. It will often feel selfish, even when it isn't. But every time you let your values make the decision, you're choosing yourself over your conditioning. And that's exactly how congruence is built. And life lesson number 3, collect evidence that you are changing. Here's something the scapegoat role does that's particularly cruel. It makes change feel invisible. You've spent years being defined by your worst moments, your reactions, your mistakes. So when you start doing things differently, you might not even notice. Because you've been trained to notice what went wrong, not what went right. So start deliberately collecting evidence by noticing. Today I paused before I responded. Today I spoke my truth even though my voice shook. Today I didn't over-explain myself. Those aren't small things. They're proof. Proof that your conditioning doesn't get the final word. Proof that you are not the role your family assigned you. Proof that you are the person you've always known yourself to be. The way we handle life's challenges teaches the people around us how to handle theirs. Some of you may be sitting with a quiet recognition right now that some of what was done to you, you passed on without meaning to. Not because you were a bad parent, but because you were responding from your conditioning. You were doing what felt familiar. What you learned long before you knew there was another way. That recognition isn't something to be ashamed of. It's actually the beginning of change. Because here's what's true. The most powerful thing you can do for the next generation isn't a conversation. It's the work you're doing on yourself right now. When your children or grandchildren watch you pause before reacting, stay true to what you believe in when someone pushes you back, or wish someone a happy birthday even when they didn't wish you one, they're seeing something they may never have seen before. A person choosing who they want to be over who they were conditioned to be. That changes families. That changes future generations. That's how generational patterns break. Not with a lecture, with a life lived differently. Your children don't need a perfect parent or grandparent. They need to see an adult who is being true to themselves. Living in the scapegoat role is hard. The self-doubt, the shame, the constant conflict between who you are and how you've been conditioned to respond. That's a heavy thing to carry. But here's what I've learned. As hard as the scapegoat role is, living against what you deeply believe in is even harder. And the way out isn't one big dramatic moment of change. It's every time you choose what you believe in over your conditioning. It's every time you respond in a way that matches the person you know yourself to be. Those choices become evidence. Evidence that you can change. Evidence that the scapegoat role was never your identity. That's what congruence feels like. Not a breakthrough, just a quiet choice that brings you back to yourself. Because congruence isn't becoming someone new. It's finally becoming yourself. Whether you're starting to understand yourself more clearly or learning to do things differently, you're building the skills to grow into the person you were meant to be. Listening is important, but real change happens when you use what you've learned. That's why I've created a cheat sheet. See the pattern, now what? For today's episode. Join my free email community. Each week, I'll help you name the pattern, show how it shows up in your life, explain the cost, and how to respond differently. Find the link in the show notes or visit lessonsforlifewithgrandmakate.com. And if you want more life lessons like this, be sure to follow Lessons for Life with Grandma Kate on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If this episode resonated with you, there's a link in the show notes to show your appreciation. Either way, I am grateful for you being here. If no one has told you lately, everything will be okay. Tomorrow is a new day, and with it comes new hope. As I conclude this episode, I must state that this podcast is designed solely for educational and entertainment purposes. While I bring my experience as a parent and grandparent, it's essential that you know I am not a licensed therapist. This podcast is not a substitute for professional advice from a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. Got it? Awesome. Until next time, what is one thing you are grateful for?